It is just after 11 p.m. on September 7th, 1940. The location is the southern coast of England, near the quiet village of Foreness. The sea is black and restless. The wind carries the smell of salt, oil, and wet grass. Above it all, the sky looks empty. Inside a low concrete building, Flight Officer Daniel Reeves stands perfectly still. He is 24 years old. His uniform is damp at the collar. His hands hover near a glowing green screen that hums softly in the dark. The room is not loud. That is what unsettles him most. No engines, no bombs. Just a faint electrical whine and the slow sweep of a bright line circling a glass tube. Then the line twitches. Reeves leans closer. A small blip appears, then another, then many more. Contact, he says quietly. Miles away across the channel, German bombers are already airborne. Crews sit in tight metal compartments, oxygen masks pressed to their faces. They trust their maps. They trust their experience. And most of all, they trust what their commanders have told them. The British are blind at night. Back in Berlin, senior Luftwaffe officers had laughed at reports of strange radio towers along the English coast. Tall steel frames, ugly and exposed, standing like scarecrows by the sea. Someone had called them radio direction toys. Another officer joked that the British were trying to frighten German pilots with science fiction. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring himself dismissed the idea that these towers could guide fighters through darkness and cloud. British propaganda, he called it, a bluff, a technical fantasy exaggerated by nervous islanders. Tonight would prove otherwise. In the radar room, the air grows tense. Reeves watches the blips move inland, slow and deliberate. These are not fighters. Too steady, too organized. Bombers. He passes the information down the line. Phones ring, voices sharpen. Somewhere inland, airfields begin to stir. At RAF Biggin Hill, squadron leader Arthur Collins is already pulling on his gloves. He has flown 3 sorties today. His eyes burn from fatigue, but he does not hesitate. The call is clear. Enemy aircraft, inbound. Altitude and heading confirmed. Collins steps outside. The night air is cold. The ground crew works fast, hands moving by memory. His Hurricane fighter waits on the tarmac, dark and patient. For months, Collins has heard the jokes too, even from fellow pilots. Radar can't see through cloud. Radar can't tell friend from foe. Radar won't matter when the bombs start falling. Yet here he is, being launched into darkness based on something no pilot can see. In the operations room, large maps cover the walls. Wooden markers slide across them, pushed by women of the Women's Auxiliary Air Force. Their movements are precise, calm, trained. Radar reports become plots, plots become paths, paths become orders. The system is slow by modern standards, clumsy even. But it works. And more importantly, it works together. German bombers cross the English coast expecting confusion. They expect delayed reactions, searchlights scrambling too late, fighters rising blindly, if at all. Instead, British fighters are already climbing. Collins feels the engine vibrate beneath him as his aircraft lifts into the black. There is no moon tonight, no horizon, just darkness and the soft glow of instruments. Vector 150, comes the voice in his headphones. Calm, measured, human. Someone on the ground is watching the sky for him. In the lead, German bomber Lieutenant Karl Weiss checks his watch. Everything is on schedule. The radio is quiet. No enemy fighters reported. British defenses, as expected, appear disorganized. He does not know that his aircraft has been tracked for over 20 minutes. Weiss peers into the darkness ahead. England is somewhere beneath the clouds. Targets marked on his map. Factories, rail yards, cities. He never sees Collins coming. The first burst of gunfire rips through the night, sudden and shocking. Tracers flash past the bomber's wing. The formation scatters. Radios erupt with shouted warnings in German. "What fighters?" someone yells. "How did they find us?" Collins banks hard, heart pounding. He has no time to think about radar towers or theories, only angles, speed, survival. Below, the radar screen continues its endless sweep. Blips split apart. Some fade, some vanish entirely. Daniel Reeves exhales slowly. This was not luck. This was not coincidence. For the first time, the night sky has ears, and the men who mocked that idea are about to pay for it. Dawn breaks pale and uneasy over northern France. At a Luftwaffe airfield near Calais, mechanics move among parked bombers, counting damage in silence. Torn metal, oil stains, shattered glass. Lieutenant Karl Weiss sits on an upturned crate, helmet in his lap. His hands shake slightly as he lights a cigarette. He has flown night raids before. Poland, France, even the early weeks over England. None felt like last night. The debriefing room smells of cold coffee and wet leather. Pilots speak over one another, voices edged with frustration. They were waiting for us. In the dark. No flares. No warning. An intelligence officer scribbles notes but offers no answers. He repeats what Berlin has already decided. British night interception is inefficient. Losses are acceptable. The enemy cannot sustain this. Weiss exhales smoke toward the ceiling and says nothing. He remembers the moment his bomber shook under fire, the sudden accuracy, the way the fighter slid out of darkness as if guided. It felt intentional. Across the channel, the mood is different. At RAF headquarters, exhaustion mixes with quiet satisfaction. No cheering, no victory speeches, only clipped voices and careful analysis. Britain is still losing aircraft. Pilots are still dying. Cities still burn. But the system worked. Radar stations along the coast report clean tracks. Controllers refine their timing. Fighter squadrons adjust altitude faster now. Interception windows tighten. The British do not see radar as a miracle. They see it as a tool, one piece in a chain that must not break. Flight Officer Daniel Reeves returns to his station that night. Same room, same hum, same green glow. He feels older than yesterday. The blips return, again and again. Each night follows a similar rhythm. German bombers cross the coast. Radar detects them early. Fighters are launched with purpose, not panic. Searchlights coordinate instead of guessing. The Luftwaffe begins to notice patterns. Losses increase. Bomb loads scatter as formations break apart. Crews drop payloads early, eager to escape unseen attackers. Back in Berlin, irritation turns to disbelief. Senior commanders demand explanations. How can British fighters appear so consistently at the right place, at the right time? Radio interception is suspected. Spies. Luck. Radar remains dismissed. The towers are visible from the air. Too obvious to be useful, some argue. If they truly mattered, they would have been destroyed by now. Yet those towers keep standing. On the night of September 15th, 1940, the bombers come again in force. The weather is poor, low cloud, ideal conditions, German planners believe, to confuse defenders. Reeves watches the screen fill faster than usual. Large raid, he reports. At Biggin Hill, Arthur Collins straps in once more. He has barely slept in 3 days. His squadron is understrength. Faces he knows are missing. Still, when the controller speaks, he listens without question. Angels 15. Turn starboard. Up in the clouds, Collins feels blind, but not lost. Below him, someone is tracking both hunter and hunted, adjusting vectors, predicting movement, turning invisible waves into guidance. The interception is brutal and brief. Gunfire erupts at close range. Bombers jettison payloads blindly. One explodes mid-air, lighting the clouds for a heartbeat. On the ground, fires burn, but fewer than expected. By morning, the Luftwaffe knows something has gone wrong. Reports stack up. Night raids are no longer safer than daylight attacks. Crews complain of unseen fighters. Morale dips. During fumes. He demands results. England must be broken. The response is not to improve night tactics. It is to change strategy. German planners begin shifting toward daylight bombing again, believing visibility will restore control. Fighters can escort bombers. Targets can be seen. Radar, if it exists, will matter less in clear skies. It is a critical decision. The British, meanwhile, adapt again. Radar guides daylight interceptions too. Faster, cleaner, more lethal. Reeves notices fewer blips at night now. The sky grows quieter after weeks of tension. The towers still hum. For the Luftwaffe, the mockery fades into something colder. An unspoken recognition that they misjudged their enemy, not in courage, but in preparation. The British did not outfight them at first. They outlistened them, and that mistake cannot be undone. October arrives with fog and drizzle. England feels smaller in the cold. At the radar station near Ventnor, operators work wrapped in thick sweaters, breath visible in the dim light. The equipment is temperamental. Tubes burn out, signals blur. Every shift feels like a test of patience. Yet the rhythm holds. Flight Officer Daniel Reeves has learned to read imperfections. A stutter on the screen. A faint echo where nothing should be. Experience teaches him which blips matter and which lie. Tonight, the air is unusually quiet. The Luftwaffe has reduced night raids. Not stopped them, but scaled them back. When they do come, they approach in smaller groups, hoping to slip through gaps. There are fewer gaps now. In a German operations bunker outside Paris, officers argue over maps. Radar reports, captured intelligence, prisoner accounts, fragments of truth, are discussed reluctantly. One junior officer dares to say it aloud. They are guiding fighters from the ground. The room falls silent. If true, it changes everything. Night bombing was supposed to be safe, a way to grind Britain down without bleeding air crews. But guided interception turns darkness into a trap. The proposal to destroy the radar towers resurfaces. But it comes late. Earlier in the summer, the towers were attacked only in passing, not systematically, not persistently. Repairs were fast. The British protected what mattered. Now the Luftwaffe is stretched thin. Aircraft losses mount on other fronts. Resources are redirected east. Time is gone. Arthur Collins feels the shift personally. Daylight sorties increase. Dogfights return. The sky becomes crowded again. Radar still speaks to him, but now through urgency rather than calm. Vectors come faster. Decisions feel tighter. He survives October. Many do not. In London, nights grow quieter. Not peaceful, but survivable. Civil defense wardens notice fewer bombers. Fires still break out, but not with the same relentless certainty. People sleep in fits. Children learn to listen for sirens less often. The invisible shield holds. Back at his station, Reeves watches empty sweeps more frequently. He does not relax. He knows the system only works if every part stays sharp. One night, a lone contact appears. High altitude, fast. Single track, he reports. The fighter intercepts it easily. This is what control feels like. In Berlin, reality sets in. Reports confirm that British radar coverage is extensive. Interception efficiency is too high to ignore. Göring no longer laughs when the towers are mentioned. But acknowledging the mistake does not fix it. The Luftwaffe's failure to suppress radar early has reshaped the battle. Britain's air defense network has matured under fire. Operators, controllers, and pilots now act as one, a system, not a miracle. By November, the Battle of Britain fades from headlines, but not from memory. The Luftwaffe turns eastward. England remains unbroken. Reeves steps outside his station one morning as frost coats the grass. The towers loom overhead, steel ribs against a pale sky. They are still standing. Arthur Collins reads the casualty lists and says nothing. He knows how close it came, how fragile the balance was. Across Europe, German planners move on, carrying a lesson they never wanted to learn. Technology, when dismissed, becomes destiny. The night sky no longer belongs to bombers alone. It listens. Winter settles over Europe like a held breath. By December of 1940, the air war over Britain has changed. The great night raids that once thundered across the Channel now come irregularly, cautiously. The Luftwaffe has not been defeated outright, but it has been checked. And that distinction matters. In a briefing room outside Berlin, maps are rolled up instead of pinned. New priorities dominate the tables. Fuel allocations, aircraft transfers. The East begins to pull attention like gravity. A senior staff officer studies a thin folder marked funk mess, radio measurement, radar. Inside are reports that arrived too late, captured British documents, interrogations. Technical assessments from engineers who were finally allowed to speak honestly. They describe a network, not a trick. Coastal detection, inland tracking, centralized control, fighter guidance precise enough to place aircraft within visual range, even in darkness. The officer closes the folder slowly. This should have been destroyed in July. In England, the system that survived now hardens. Radar stations reinforce their defenses. Equipment is improved. Operators receive better training. Controllers learn to manage chaos. The human element evolves fastest. Daniel Reeves is no longer new. He trains replacements now. Young men who arrived nervous and eager, staring too hard at the screens. He teaches them patience. Don't chase every echo, he says. Let the picture form. He remembers his own first nights, the fear of being wrong, of sending fighters into empty sky. Mistakes still happen, but fewer. Arthur Collins is promoted. The badge on his uniform changes, but his routine does not. He flies when ordered. He leads younger pilots who trust voices from the ground as much as their own eyes. He tells them the same thing every time. You're not alone up there. Someone's watching. They believe him. Across occupied Europe, German aircrews trade stories. Night interception over England becomes a cautionary tale. Darkness is no longer safety. Silence no longer protection. Morale erodes quietly. The Luftwaffe adapts where it can. New navigation aids. Electronic countermeasures. Experiments to confuse British signals. But countering a mature system takes time. And time is something Germany no longer has. The strategic shift becomes permanent. The focus moves east. England becomes a problem to be contained, not conquered. In London, scars remain. Entire streets are gone. Families mourn quietly. Victory does not feel triumphant, but survival feels earned. One evening, Reeves stands on the station roof as the sun sets. The Channel reflects orange and gray. The towers cast long shadows inland. He thinks about how close it came, how easily a different decision could have changed everything. Had those towers been taken seriously? Had they been destroyed early? Had mockery given way to curiosity? History rarely turns on noise. More often, it turns on what is ignored. Arthur Collins visits a memorial months later. Names carved into stone, friends, rivals, men who trusted a system still finding its shape. He places a hand against the cold surface and steps back. The Battle of Britain did not end with a single victory. It ended with endurance. And radar, once dismissed as unreliable, proved that wars are not only won by firepower, but by perception, by knowing where the enemy is before he knows you are there. The night had changed sides. The war moves on, but the lesson remains. Years later, long after the sirens have fallen silent, historians will argue about tactics and turning points. They will count aircraft lost and factories saved. They will debate whether Britain could have survived without American aid, or whether invasion was ever truly possible. But none of those arguments erase what happened in the skies of 1940. On a quiet evening in early spring, Daniel Reeves walks the perimeter of the radar station one last time before reassignment. The equipment hums behind him, steady and familiar. New faces work the screens now, confident, methodical. He pauses at the fence and looks out toward the sea. Once, this water carried the threat of invasion. Now it feels like a boundary that held. Reeves knows the system will not stop evolving. New enemies will find new ways to hide. Technology will answer technology. But the principle is set. Information changes everything. Arthur Collins survives the war. He never speaks much about the Battle of Britain. When asked, he shrugs and says they did their job. What he does remember is trust. Trust in voices he never met. Trust in instructions that came from darkness. Trust that someone, somewhere, had a clearer picture than he did alone. In Germany, post-war assessments are less forgiving. Analysts acknowledge the failure openly. The early dismissal of British radar is listed among the Luftwaffe's greatest miscalculations. Not because radar was perfect, but because it was underestimated. The towers that once stood exposed along the coast become symbols, not of secrecy, but of confidence. The British did not hide their advantage. They dared their enemy to understand it. The enemy did not. During the Battle of Britain, night raids were meant to bypass resistance. Instead, they revealed it. Radar-guided interception did not merely break up attacks. It broke assumptions, and assumptions, once shattered, cannot be rebuilt mid-war. The Luftwaffe changed strategy because it had to. Night no longer belonged to bombers. Daylight was no safer. The sky itself had become contested terrain. For the viewer today, the story carries weight beyond history. War is not decided only by strength or courage. It is decided by attention, by which signals are taken seriously and which are laughed away. In 1940, German commanders mocked a technology they did not understand. British operators listened to it instead. The result was not dramatic in a single moment. No decisive battle, no final explosion. Just failure. Repeated. Quiet. Unavoidable. And that is how the night raids ended, not with defeat announced, but with plans abandoned. The sky had learned to listen.